Entertaining. Cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Behind the Camera with Charisse Glenn and Joshua Rappaport, only on LA Talk Radio.
Wow.
And we're live.
And we're live. Welcome to Behind the Camera with Joshua Rappaport, and I'm Charisse Glenn. And we are starting our debut show.
We are here to talk about the behind the camera of commercial acting here in Los Angeles.
And between the two of us, Josh and I have over 65 years of commercial acting experience and commercial casting director experience.
Both in front of and behind the camera.
Correct.
Yes.
So we welcome you to join our conversation, asking us any question you like about the business. And
the call-in number is 323-203-0815.
Cool. Also, if I can get this together, we are going to be Facebook Live in moments, once I figure out how to do the technology.
While she's taking care of that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Joshua Rappaport. I grew up I can almost see the house I grew up in from where we're sitting here in Sherman Oaks. I grew up in the Valley and started my acting career in 1976 and was cast in my first commercial by a casting director here in Los Angeles named Glenn Sharp, who happens to be Charisse's
mother. So I'm a second generation casting director. My mother was a casting director for, 50 years or so. And my stepfather was a stuntman. So I really grew up on the fringe behind the camera and swore I'd never do it. Swore I'd never be in the business, not going to be in casting, definitely was not going to be an actor. And I moved away many times, and I moved back because I had run out of money and I was living in Europe. I thought I'd come back to LA, make a quick buck, and leave. And that was 33 years ago.
And what transpired that you decided you suddenly had a love for doing it? Was there something changed, or?
Well, it didn't start out. Hold on one second. I can't multitask.
Charisse is doing the Facebook Live. I'll say that I started as an actor, like I said, in 1976. And then in 1986, I was approached by one of the busiest commercial casting directors in Los Angeles, a man by the name of Danny Goldman. And I started directing commercial casting sessions, and I've been doing it ever since. So.
Wow.
I've been casting session runner, director, casting director for also 30, how many years is that?
33. Same as
33.
me, 1986. Yeah, I didn't think I wanted to do it, and I moved back to Los Angeles. My mother said, why don't you work for me for a bit and do some acting? I thought, yeah, sure, why not? And I went to meet an agent, and he said, I have an audition right now that you can get to, which I did. And I booked it, and I ended up making like $35,000 off of one day. And then the same week, I booked another commercial with the same casting director, and it was for a beer commercial, and it ran for several years, and I made oodles of money. And I thought, okay, I can do this for a while.
Yeah, I would think so. That, of course, we have to qualify that was back in the heyday of commercials making a lot of money. There were a lot of people in Los Angeles who could make a great living being commercial actors. It's a little bit more difficult these days.
Yes, it is. So why don't we talk about that, Josh? Let's talk about, since this is our first show, let's talk about what this business is and how it works.
Great. Well, how does the process start? What's the beginning of the impetus for a television commercial?
Well, for me, Josh and I are both independent casting directors, and we procure our work differently. Sometimes our work comes via a production company, which represents the director, and sometimes it comes via the advertising agency, which represents the client. A good percentage of my work comes through the director, and yours is different,
A lot
right?
of mine comes through the advertising agency. I always like to define it as a casting director, you sort of have two parents, the production company and the advertising agency.
Right.
You have to answer to both of them because it's a collaborative medium.
R-
And so the director gives a color to what the advertising agency is trying to uh, do for their clients.
I like what you say about that, though. You say the production company is the father.
And the advertising agency is the mother, and we all know that the mom usually gets the last word in things.
Ultimately, although in the 90s, the the father did.
In the 90s, we went through a whole period
Yeah.
of time where commercials were very much about ambiance, feel, look, about having celebrity directors.
And so it was director driven.
It was
And
very director
mhm,
and very concept driven, and not a lot of hard selling going on.
right. And now it's very advertising agency driven and client driven.
Well, I think that the advertising world has gone back to a form of more direct and not in your face, but more direct idea of advertising to sell a product as
Right.
opposed to creating
Okay. So
an aura.
we've been awarded the job, and then so what happens? What happens in my world is we hope we get specs relatively soon. The specs, right? The specs are the specifications of what they're looking for for the commercial. So it's the actors broken down into categories. It could be male, female, boy, girl, ages, ethnicities, sometimes special skills. Um, Always a certain je ne sais quoi, a vibe about them or a certain look about them, and they have certain qualities that they need to aspire to.
The advertising agencies and their descriptions can get very elaborate in what it is that they're looking for, and it's up to us to try and fulfill that, knowing what they have described to us. But
Right.
we tend to put it out to the acting world in a not more simplistic way, but maybe a trimmed down way.
A more concise way, I think. And in actor ease, like there's certain dialogue that a commercial casting director will use to describe an actor,
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
A
absolutely.
young mom, a young dad,
Comedic
rural.
or city or
Mhm.
all different. There's
So,
all different ways of.
so then it goes. The specifications go out onto the breakdown, and there's three different breakdown services in Los Angeles. One is the breakdown services, which was the original. Which,
Breakdown services started as a theatrical device where they would put out breakdowns for theatrical casting, and then they also had a commercial arm to them. Way back in the day when we started, they actually had telex machines in the
casting,
commercial casting offices, and also in the
talent agencies.
talent agencies. I
Yes.
couldn't think of what they were called. They're called
Yeah.
talent agencies.
And then it turned into a fax machine.
And then about 12 years ago, somebody showed up with a computer that had a great program that simplified and complicated in a strange way too, but simplified the whole
Right.
casting process.
What sped it up?
It sped the whole thing
Yeah,
up,
it
exactly.
definitely sped
It
it up.
used to be that this was also almost, you would agree with this, it was more of a 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 kind of a job. You could only put out calls to agents while the agents were in their office.
Right,
And
6 o'clock was the cutoff time to put out your times, and we used to at the end of the day physically have to get on the phone and call each individual talent agency and give them verbally the times for their actors to come in the next day. And 6 o'clock that was it.
right,
You had to do it before 6.
right. We used to make 300 phone calls in a day.
Oh, at least. So now that we don't have that, so we have the breakdown service. We have another one called LA Casting, and the third one is called Casting Frontier. Now, I personally use LA Casting and sometimes Casting Frontier. Breakdown services I use for specific things, but it's not my go-to.
I agree with you. I mostly use LA Casting. I've also used Casting Frontier in the past, but I mostly use LA Casting.
So it's imperative for actors to be on all three of them, but if they can only be on two, I would say LA Casting for number one,
Absolutely.
and Casting Frontier for two. So what happens, we have the breakdown service, we go on to whichever program we use, and we send out a breakdown to the talent agencies, and there are 784 people potentially it can go to, and that gives you the commercial or gives them the commercial, how it runs, and what we're looking for, when it shoots, when the fitting day is, and any other information they need.
Whether it's a guild job or a non-guild job, which is a complicated issue that we'll get into at a certain point, I'm sure, but a union or non-union job, and it'll tell you the rate of pay, how it's running, when it's shooting, all of those particulars.
Right. And then the agents look at that and they pick their actors who they think will fit the part the best and submit those back to us via that website, and then we go through those submissions. Those are considered submissions.
Just as an example, let's say we were casting women in their 20s and it was a fairly well-paying job. How many submissions would you get?
Like Pretty Women in
Yes.
all ethnicities,
All ethnicities.
5,000 or more submissions.
I would say at a minimum 5,000
Yeah,
people.
5,000.
People in their 20s.
And how many would you see out of those 5,000?
Depending on the number of days that I'm casting, I generally for each part I like to see somewhere in the region of 30 to 35 people
Per day.
per day.
Mm-hmm.
Per day, and again, this is dependent upon how many
Parts.
how many parts and what the parts have to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it dialogue? Is it just a family reacting? Is it just people having fun out in a park, or people doing yoga, or people?
So Josh,
mountain
out of those
climbing?
5,000 people, let's say you have 3 days of casting. So you have 150 people out of that 5,000,
Right.
right? So sometimes I'll get 100 submissions, depending on, what the breakdown is. It's a bungee jumper that's in their 60s. I might get 20 submissions. So 5,000 isn't typical for all parts, but it is common.
No, but there is very often you're getting over 1,000 photos per
Yeah.
part.
Okay, so that brings us down to the submission process. So I go through, you go through, we look through, we find those 150 special people that we want to see, and then we schedule those people to come in to a casting.
Correct. And then we then put out an email that sends that out, all that information out to the agents. The agents then transfer that information to you, the actor. The actor then shows up at our offices or our studios where we're doing the casting and is greeted by usually someone sitting in the lobby near a sign-in sheet.
Okay, so this brings me to one of my biggest pet peeves. Can we go into pet peeves this quickly?
We can do whatever we want.
Okay. So one of my biggest pet peeves in the new world of acting is many of the actors now they're one of those 150 people out of the 5,000 people. They come in, they don't come in on time. They come in, they don't come in and they ask for time changes. They want to come in on a different day, or they just don't show up. So the worst is they just don't show up, because that actually leaves a hole in the schedule for an actor that would have shown up to be there.
Now,
And
I want to preface this by saying we take time to create a schedule, and we try to schedule it in a way that makes it conducive for us to see as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, and not have actors waiting. Obviously, sometimes things get out of whack and actors have to wait a little bit longer. But when you don't show up, it throws the whole schedule off, and that will throw the whole schedule off all day, especially if you do show up but out of time frame.
right. So, okay, getting back to my pet peeve, which is because it's all about me for right now, is actors. I love actors, and Josh and I both love actors. Josh teaches an acting class. I am a major actors advocate because I know what it's like to be in front of the camera. I think it's one of the more difficult things to do is to be a commercial actor. So I understand that, and I do have, my heart goes out to actors. However, the actors that are coming into the business that are not taking it as a business, it's an acting business, not taking it seriously, those are my pet peeve. That is my pet peeve. It's the ones that aren't taking it serious. And I always akin it to, if I was going on a job interview to IBM, I wouldn't show up late. I wouldn't show up with my stroller. I wouldn't show up with my whole family waiting in the waiting room. And I wouldn't ask for them to accommodate my lifestyle.
This goes to the idea of what is the actor's responsibility, which I like to talk about in the terms of, I agree with you, but I think part of that unpreparedness is not understanding that the real job of being a commercial actor is going on the audition, is seeking the work.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the major things that people misperceive. The work of being a commercial actor is going on the audition, parking your car, being on time, being in wardrobe, being prepared, knowing what you're there for, knowing who you're seeing, waiting patiently, waiting with a good attitude, going in the room, doing your audition,
And having a whole lot of fun.
and
in the-
having fun, hopefully, and performing and doing what it is that you love to do. And that's really the work of it, is the pursuit of doing what you love to do. I always say that when you get the job and you're actually working on the set, that's paid vacation, because you're not having to do your job of hunting for the job.
Well, it's true. It's so true.
Yeah.
The thing about being on set, which is, I think, a whole different show in itself, but being on set, you're there because everybody likes you. You know,
Right.
you've already gotten the job, so there's nothing you have to do except for do what you did and be who you are and listen, be professional, but
right.
just go have a good old time.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the audition. So now you've auditioned. Then what happens?
After a day of auditioning, at the end of the day, we create a website. It used to be we had videotapes. That was another thing that we had a time limit on. We used to have to get our videotapes done by a certain time so the messenger could pick it up, so we could air, drop
We're
it,
really dating ourselves.
send it over to New York or wherever the advertising agency was or the production company
Running
was.
to the LAX when we missed the messenger.
Nowadays, we just finish at whatever time we finish. We create a website and we upload that website to the advertising agency and the production company.
Mhm.
The advertising agency and production company view what it is that we've done and make a list of people that they've liked.
And those are called callbacks.
And then what happens is the advertising agency has their list of callbacks, the production company has their list of callbacks. Sometimes there are overlapping people. Let's say they each called back 10 people in any one particular part, but there's only 5 that overlap. That in the old days, we used to call back just those 5 people. Nowadays, we call back everybody that anybody's had any interest in.
Right.
And we've sort of coined it as it's now an all back. So we might have seen 50 people for a part, but they might call back 30 people.
Right. So we have a callback. Everybody comes back. It often can be at a different studio, so it's important for the actor, again, to be professional, read the information. And they come to the callback, and in the room, they walk into the room, and there are a bunch of people there. Sometimes there's a bunch of people there and you don't see them because they're behind a wall. But generally, there's a bunch of people there. So you have the director, the producer, the agency producer, the creatives at the agency, which
The
could be
writer and the art director and a producer from the agency.
sometimes an executive producer from the production company. Very rarely are the clients at the callback.
Very rarely.
So now you walk into the room feeling slightly intimidated because there's a whole lot of people there. And it's our job as the casting director, yours, Josh's, and mine, to make the actors feel good because we want you to do an amazing job. We really want you to blow everybody's socks off because that makes us look good.
I think that that's something every actor needs to remember, that every room that they go into that they're going to perform or read, whether it's a theatrical casting, a commercial casting, or a theater casting, everybody in that room wants you to be brilliant.
Right.
You never walk into a room where somebody is sitting in the corner thinking, oh man, I hope these people are really terrible. Because we all want you to be brilliant. We want you to answer the question of who's going to get this part. We want it to be so apparent that nobody can miss that.
And so that's another reason to go in super prepared. If there's dialogue or direction change, most of the time the session director will come out to the waiting room, or somebody will come out to the waiting room and give an overall description of what's going on in the room. Not always, but most of the time we want you to come in prepared. So take a moment to actually listen to what's being said, understand where your blocking is, understand how the cue card is going to be used. And so you go into the room, you blow our socks off. We like you so much. Everybody's making, triple stars next to your name. You leave and you let it go. because you never know. So you let it go. And after the entire day is over, then the real work comes for our people. The production company, meaning the director, and the advertising agency, now they go through all the parts and they figure out who they want for their first choices for all the parts, their second choices for all the parts, and on occasion,
The
third
third
choices.
choice.
And then what happens, Josh?
Usually we then make another website. We put down the first choice, second choice, third choice, and we send that off to the person who's actually making the decision, who's very often not in the room with you for any of this, who, in my case, because a lot of the stuff that I do comes at agency direct, it's the creative director at the ad agency. And
Yeah, mine is like, well, it all goes back to the advertising agency at some point, and then the advertising agency then takes that to the client. So the client is whoever it is, Union 76 or um,
there's a Union 76 station
there is
outside
right down,
outside
right.
the window right here. That's why.
Or it could be the water company or the watch company or the phone company or whomever the client is, the car company, and they present, generally, they present their first choices. Now, sometimes the first choices don't make the cut.
Right. For any reason, somebody can dislike one of the actors or actresses.
So then they figure out who they want. They call back or email the casting director and they, okay, we want to book these people. So congratulations, actor, you've made it to the booking. We then call your agents and then they call you and they say, congratulations.
Congratulations. And they give you your shoot day and your wardrobe fitting and all the good stuff. And you get to celebrate for the fact that you don't have to work that day.
So that's how the business works. So you can see there's a lot of cogs in the wheel to actually get from being chosen from this initial submission. So Josh, that's a good question. So out of 5,000 people, what is it that makes you choose those 150 people?
We've talked about this before. I think a lot of it is intuitive. I mean, for both of us as well, I think a lot of it is no matter how many actors there are in LA, I've seen a lot of those headshots before. I've interviewed a lot of those people. So we both have a large backlog of knowledge of talent.
And who can do what?
Who can do what? You do a lot of Spanish language, which entails having a knowledge of people's accents. Because there's only certain accents that are allowed in the Spanish markets.
Right, it's a very non-regional accent.
Right. And I've done a lot of spokesperson casting, so I have to know who is capable of speaking directly to camera, which is not always an easy thing to do. I always liken it to, not to mention names, but Robert Duvall had a MasterCard commercial a decade or more ago, and he wasn't very good, and he's one of the greatest actors of his generation, So being a great actor is not necessarily being a great spokesperson. Being a great spokesperson is the ability to talk to camera and have people believe you. And so that's a very specialized skill. So
okay, so going off topic a little bit, that's a really good question. That was one of the questions that somebody wrote in during the week, and they weren't able to call in today. But their question was, or their comment was, you don't have to be a good actor to be a commercial actor, right? Big question mark.
Wrong.
Don't you only have to be an actor to do film? And I thought, wow, that's an interesting question because, correct me if you feel differently, Josh. I think to be a commercial actor is extremely difficult because you have 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or 60 seconds to convey an entire story.
Right.
And oftentimes it's with a look in the eye.
Right. It takes a great skill to be able to tell that whole story in just a look, a glance, a persona. You don't have 3 acts to develop a character. You have to become that character right away. You have to be obviously that character.
Right. So I'm not discounting. Being a great dramatic actor takes utmost skill, but being a good commercial actor also takes skill. It's a different kind of skill, and there's so many reasons to take a good commercial class, but part of it is learning what the ropes are, how to walk into the room, how to hit your mark. What is a mark? What is your light? Finding your light. What does that mean? Knowing where the camera is. What does that mean? There are a lot of things that we take for granted because it's what we do every day. But a novice actor who's never been in a casting studio, has never seen a video camera in front of them, and has never had to block a scene, it behooves you to get very comfortable with that, because just the audition process alone can be a little nerve-wracking.
Well, that's the thing. You know, everybody's very nervous going into an audition. You know, you wouldn't be human if there weren't some nerves involved. I like to try and redirect that as nerves to excitement, to anticipation.
I used that the other day.
Yeah.
An actor came in, and it was a callback, and it was with dialogue, quite a lot of dialogue, and quite a bit of blocking. And I asked him, outside, I said, "Are you nervous?" And he said, "Yes." And he goes, "I really want this job." And I said, "Okay. So be nervous. If you just think it's excitement instead, go in there super excited. It's the same energy, but your attitude's going to be different."
Well, and he actually had words to convey, so it makes it a little bit easier in that respect. I find I much prefer to have spots where there is dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier, much more concrete. You can see right away whether somebody can or can't do the dialogue. Whereas where it's something where it's just a look, it's up to so much interpretation.
Okay, there's so many subjects to talk about. That's why this is going to be an ongoing show. But a friend of mine who is just starting to get into the business. She's a lovely woman. Maybe she's listening. Hey, lovely woman. I won't mention your name out there. But she said something to me about auditioning. She goes, "Well, it's kind of subjective and kind of a crapshoot, and I'll go be me. I'll go show up, and if they like me, they like me." Which, okay, a lot of that's true. However, I have to say that having skill will take you to the next level. So, for example, I just booked a commercial.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So you're back acting?
A little bit, yes. I'm trying to keep my SAG insurance going.
You're trying to keep your SAG insurance going. That's one of the big benefits of being a Screen Actors Guild member is the insurance, and I'm collecting my pension.
Yeah, so am I. So I'm trying to keep my insurance going. I did book. I actually booked 2 commercials. I will pat myself on the back. One was as a hiker, and one was doing yoga. And being an older woman, fit, I got the job. I was really excited. But the point is that my friend said, "Well, it's kind of a crapshoot." I said, "Yes, it's a crapshoot, but okay, I look the way I look. I've got the right ethnicity for the job. I have the right body type for the job. However, if I couldn't do the dialogue, if I couldn't do the skill, which one was hiking, but it was really hiking. It was like jumping on boulders and running on rocks. And so if I wasn't fit enough, or if I wasn't quite proficient at the yoga, I wouldn't have gotten the job, even though I looked right. And I might have been able to do the dialogue, but if I didn't have all the skills needed.
Right.
So it's a crapshoot, but it's not a crapshoot.
It's not a crapshoot. It's a game of. It's our job to find that person that it fits all of those parameters.
Mm-hmm.
We can't find somebody who just looks right, or somebody who just acts right, or somebody who just hikes correctly. We have to find that person that can do all of those things, and that's our job. Our job is to filter through the 5,000. We're like the funnel between the big acting world down to this specific job. And I always say it's a winnowing process. We have to take the 5,000 people down to the 150 that we select, down to the 50 that we show them, down to the 20 or 10 that get the call back, down to the 2 that put on a veil, down to the 1 who ends up booking the job.
And is that one that gets booked, is it often the one that you thought was going to be booked?
No. No, it's so funny. Oftentimes when I'm going through the casting process, I'll be thinking about should I choose this person? Should I not choose this person? And I'll choose them, and I'll try to say to myself, remember that you did choose them if they end up booking. I can never remember whether I'm consternated or not as to whether I was going to choose them or not. It's like when you're making your selects, oftentimes there are people where you think, well, this person's going to be in the final running. You can sort of semi-predict who's going to be making it to callback.
I just finished a job where my first choice I put as the first person on the link, so that's the first person my client saw when they saw the first day of casting. I loved him. I thought he nailed it. He had the right look. He had the right voice. He could do the
Well, wasn't he the
action.
first person in also?
He was the first person in as well. So he
Yeah.
made my day great in a way because I knew I had it, and really bad for the other actors because he set the bar really high.
Right.
So he was my favorite, hands down my favorite. He did get a call back, and he came in first again. Actually, I had set him to be second, but the first person canceled. So he came in, he nailed it, just nailed it. He got put on a veil. Oh, we didn't go through the veil process.
Right.
So he got put on a veil. He ended up not booking it.
Really?
Oh, I was so upset.
Really?
Yeah.
I never followed up with you because we had talked about this job.
Yeah. Oh,
He didn't book it?
no,
Wow. That's too bad.
I know.
So let's go back and talk about that avail process because I know actors get confused what avail means. It used to mean back in the day, the old days, the only people who would be put on avail would be the first choice and the second choice. And if there was potentially a third choice, we wouldn't put a lot of people on avail.
I still do it that way. Yeah.
You and I both still do it that way,
Yeah.
but we both also know that there are casting directors in town who don't do it that way.
Right.
There are some casting directors who put everybody who's on callback on avail.
Right.
And so avail has lost some of its meaning.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the first and second choice are on avail, we used to always call the agents and say, I'm releasing your avail
Mm-hmm.
for any
So
given
what an
actor.
avail is, actors out there, is it's basically a hold, but we can't use the word hold because that has a whole different connotation in SAG in Los Angeles. It doesn't in New York, which I don't
I
really
know
get that.
there's
I don't get that. But
neither
so
do I.
in Los Angeles, you're put on avail, meaning we are checking your availability for the dates that we're shooting and the fitting day, and you need to agree and confirm that you are available for those days. Once you agree that you're available for those first days, we can go back to our clients and go, yes, you can have them. They are available because nothing has come up from the time they came into the callback to the time we put them on avail, which sometimes things come up. You book another job, you've gotten sick, you've gotten injured, you decide to go on a vacation.
Family emergency,
Mhm.
something has happened, something has transpired. We've
Mhm.
run into all of those different situations.
You have a theatrical booking that you would way rather take than doing this commercial. That's great. There's so many things. But once you agree to the avail, now you're on notice that you have the possibility of booking the job. Once the job books, then you are either booked as the actor or your avail is released.
Correct. Going back to the idea of the actor's responsibilities, when you're given that first call, 9 times out of 10,
The
they're
very
gonna-
first call.
the very first
Mhm.
call, and especially if you're on LA casting and getting your text messages, which have all the information, or your emails that have all the information, included in that information is the callback dates, as well as the shoot dates. If you are, when you see those dates and you know you are not available for the shoot days, you need to call your agents and tell them you cannot go on that audition.
Or to at least notify the casting director, because sometimes shoot dates aren't defined at the first call. Sometimes it's like the week of October 1st.
Right, but if you know you're going to be out of town for the week of October 1st.
Oh, well, that's the whole. But if it's one day within that week,
Right.
then I often will see the person because we don't know the shoot date yet.
Now let me ask you this.
Mhm.
If somebody knows the callback date and is not available for the callback date, should they still come to the audition?
Generally, I would say no.
See, generally I would say yes. I just booked somebody who was not able to make the callback, and we went back to the first day's tape, as we say, and they booked him off the tape.
Yeah, sometimes. Well, that's what I would do if they're not available to. I know what you're saying. You're saying don't go to the audition at all.
Right.
Oh,
Do
no,
you
no,
come to the first?
no, absolutely, come to the first audition.
Right. So
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not available for the callback date, but you are available for the shoot day, you should still come for the first
Yes,
audition.
because callback dates often change.
Exactly
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, so absolutely
Yeah.
show up.
But if you're not available for the shoot day, but available for the first day and the callback day, I think you should not come.
No, if you're not available for the shoot day or the shoot range, definitely don't come. But
Right.
if it's a range of 10 days and it's going to shoot one day,
Right.
come, because we don't know what day it's going to shoot. That just happened on the job I've just finished.
Right.
So the shoot day was like a 2-week period.
Right.
And it's shooting today, actually.
Is it really?
Mhm.
Oh wow. Do they get extra pay for a Sunday?
That particular job is non-union.
So non-union, that's another show that we'll get into that. But non-union is very, very straightforward in that they're paying you X for Y. They're paying you X amount of money for Y amount of time. A union job has got a lot of variables in it.
Do we really want to talk about that today?
No, we're not going to. I don't really want to go into that today. So getting back to the process, what is it that is going to, when you're looking at I think you asked me this, and when you're looking at those 5,000 photos, what makes you select somebody? Not only your history with them, but what other things?
For me, I open up my computer, I click on the submissions, and then I do 150 people. That's my scroll,
Per
right?
page. And how many
So-
in a row?
5.
Yeah, one of the things, depending on the size of your computer, you can have anywhere from 4 people in a row to, I think, 7 people in a row.
I
if
do
you have
5 because I like the size of the picture.
I agree.
So then I literally let my eyes do the work. I just I scroll down the pictures. Now, oftentimes I know people and they'll get clicked in because I immediately know, oh, they've got to come in. They're my ringers, right? They're my A-listers. Sometimes I don't know them, but there's something that catches me in their eye, and it's and that's why headshots are so terribly important, that you have good, professional, focused headshots with
Well-
great eye contact.
What I say, a great headshot is embodied within the eyes, I believe. And what's important is what's behind the eyes.
Absolutely.
It can't be I'm just smiling. It can't be I'm just looking at camera and I'm handsome or I'm cute or I'm seductive or whatever it is. There has to be an intention.
Right.
You have to have intention in your so when you're getting your headshots taken, actors, be sure that you're thinking. You're thinking something specific.
I think we should have a photographer here and talk.
I think we probably will.
Okay. So I look at the eyes. I look at the overall picture. Obviously, they have to have the right look. They have to have something.
Now, I just want to go back for a second. When you're casting on LA Casting, so that everybody understands, what we're talking about in terms of the number of pictures and scrolling down through them is a thumbnail comes up that is a picture of you with your name underneath, and then a bunch of boxes for us as casting directors to mark you as a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But I don't see your resume right away. I don't see your other photos. I just see your lead photo and your name. Once I click on that little thumbnail, it then opens up your resume. It then opens up to all the other photos that you have listed on LA Casting. So there has to be something about that lead photo that will stop me and want me to click on you.
Right. And sometimes actors like myself on LA Casting have one picture. I don't recommend that. I recommend, if you're serious about acting, to have several pictures in different looks. And if you do any kind of sports, to have some action pictures, because it really will define whether or not, you get selected or not, if it's a very specific specific case. However, you really need to have a good resume.
Yes. And
a real one. As I was looking at these resumes for this other job, the spokesperson job, and I needed really good actors. And I would read these resumes going, they made all this stuff up.
well, there's always been a little bit of license that's been taken with actors in their resumes, but it does have to be representational of what you are capable of doing. You have to be honest about, whatever you've done, whether it be film, television, theater, classes that you've taken. Now, of course, there's a large part of people's resume is taken up by web episodes.
Webisodes are great. It's a great learning ground to learn
Absolutely.
your acting. You have to
There's actually a big push right now in short content form.
6 minutes, right?
6 to 10 minute videos are starting to become a whole category unto themselves.
I told you they shot a webisode at my house. They were at my house for 11 hours, I believe, with setup and breakdown. They shot 27 scenes
Wow.
in one day.
That's a lot, people.
It's a lot. It was, if that was like a commercial, 4 maybe, with all the setup and everything.
Right.
The whole different subject. I think we'll talk about that when we go into production, about how many takes you do when you're on set. But they were doing 1, 2, or maybe 3 takes per setup, and they had dialogue and dialogue. I was so in awe and I had such respect for the actor, everybody on that crew. They were doing their job spot on.
That's really something that is fabulous about this day and age right now, is that production costs have come down so much that almost anybody with a phone can make a video.
Right. Well, they had more than a phone, but it was.
A friend of mine
Yeah.
has been doing a whole series of short content films. He's done a dozen of them, and very high production value. They shoot it all on a phone
It's amazing.
with a lens attached to it.
Not your phone.
No, I have an older phone. She's making fun of my communication device.
Yes. So where were we? So resumes.
One thing I'd also like to advise people is, be honest in your assessment of things that you can do, because if you say that you're a great horse person, or you're a gymnast, or you're a swimmer, you can pretty much bet that the callback is going to be at the stable, at the gym, or at the pool. And so we know right away whether you really. I'll never forget. This was years ago. A young man came in, and I needed somebody who was confident on horseback, and he told a whole story about growing up in New Mexico, and he was fantastic with horses, and he could ride and this and that. And I don't know very much about horses. Charisse is a horsewoman. But when he showed up and he stood next to that horse, you could tell he'd never been on a horse in his life, and he was not doing anybody any favors by fabricating that he could do it. He thought it was going to help him get the job, and in fact, everybody was, he was just wasting everybody's time.
I have many horse stories of actors that have lied about their skill. The funny thing is, you can lie about certain skills, like hiking. If you just, sometimes they ask if you can hike. They don't really want you to be a mountain climber. So you could, yeah, you go up Runyon Canyon or whatever. So yeah, you can do that. Or even yoga. There's a lot of different levels of yoga, but horses you can actually get really injured on.
Yes,
Or like you wouldn't lie about skydiving, right?
I like that one. Yes, I'm a fantastic skydiver.
Oh,
Okay, ready? Go.
jump. um,
We're getting off a little bit
Yes.
here. One of the things is, as an actor, when you're asked about your skills and abilities, be honest in your assessment of your skills and abilities. If they're still married to you for whatever reason, that you do the dialogue better than anybody else, they'll be able to make allowances if they know what your actual skill level is.
well, actually, that's the point I was going to come around to too. Sometimes they ask you and they say you have to be excellent, and then it turns out you don't,
Right.
and that's okay too. But you go in not having lied, and sometimes you go and go, yeah, I'm not really very good at that, but they love you so much that
Right.
they realize you're just going to be standing there, next to the item rather than doing it. You're
Right.
going to be standing next to the airplane you're going to jump out of and not have to jump out of it.
Stunt double.
I have to tell a funny story though. I know we're getting closer to the end, but a friend of mine, this is so many years ago, I won't mention his name, but he came to me and he goes, Charisse, I auditioned for this movie with Sam Shepard and I told them I knew how to ride a horse. Can you teach me before the callback? It's like, okay, sure. So he comes over and we go to the barn and he's on my horse, but I don't have a Western saddle. I have an Arab, which is not like a quarter horse, which they have different personalities.
Sure.
My saddle was too small for him. And I taught him to get on and off. That's as far as we could get because my horse was so wiggy because he didn't know what he was doing. She's more
Right.
like a Ferrari. So then I called a friend of mine who is a cowboy guy. He's out in the Uncle Dulce area. And I said, hey, can you help me with a friend? So I take my friend out there and he's got a bunch of quarter horses and he has them all saddled up. And I said, so I've taught, let's call him D. I've taught D how to mount and dismount. And he goes, okay, D, let me see you mount and dismount. So he gets on and off and he goes, yeah, that's great if you're a girl. It's like, what? I thought, seriously, I thought he did a great job. And he said, he does it just like you. I had no idea that a man mounted a Western saddle completely different
Yeah.
than a woman.
I wouldn't have known that. I still don't know that.
Yeah. Complete that it's all different.
Right.
And then when he did it, I went, "Oh yeah, of course." And when I saw him do it correctly, it's like, "Yeah, of course that's how a man does it." But I had no idea how to even do that.
Right.
So he stayed with him for a couple weeks, going up there every day to ride, and he was actually getting better. And then he booked a TV series and never went on the call back.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. That's too funny.
So, but he was preparing. He actually took it seriously enough to he put a
course.
lot of time into learning how to do it.
Of course.
So, anyway, another question that came in recently, since I'm going completely off topic, but this question just came in, was I'm an Instagrammer. Do I need to be an actor to do commercials?
The answer is yes and no.
Okay.
Because the answer is yes, it behooves everybody if you can actually act, and no, because advertisers are now looking for eyeballs. And if you are an influencer, an Instagram influencer, and have 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 followers, the advertisers are interested in tapping into that resource. So they might make some excuses for you not being able to perform the way they want you to.
Okay, I have a completely different answer to that.
Go ahead.
Well, okay, I will say yes and no.
Yeah.
I'll say yes and no. However, I'll say more no. I'll say more yes, you need acting experience. And it only comes from my personal experience of casting a commercial where the lead was this big Instagram guy, and he had a lot to do on the spot. And then I cast all the other people, and it was on location, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And they had such trouble because the Instagrammer couldn't pull off the acting part.
Right. No,
And
I
it was very problematic for the production.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think that yes, you do need to act, but there is a whole change that's happening. We are in a new age where social media is creating its own stars, its own celebrities, its own everything, and so advertisers are trying to tap into that.
Okay, so maybe this is the other question that tags off of that is, as an actor, do you need to have an active Instagram account?
Well, this is, first off, I don't think there is a right answer. But what I would say is that as an actor, it behooves you to have a social media presence that is your professional calling card, as it were. And the more that you can build it up, the better it's going to be when you go into a room and they say to you, how many followers do you have? Instead of saying, I don't do Instagram, it's better to be able to say, well, I've got 1,000, 1,500, 5,000, 10,000, whatever it happens to be.
So when you're looking at submissions, Josh, now the agents can put notes at the
Right.
bottom. So sometimes they'll put 57,000 followers.
Right.
Does that color your view?
It doesn't, it does and it doesn't, in that I'm still always trying to fulfill what it is the advertisers have described to me. And if that Instagrammer who has 57,000 followers fits all the other criteria, yes, I will be interested in seeing them. But if they're not fitting that other criteria, they could have 150,000 followers. I'm not going to see them. So I'm trying to fulfill what they're asking for first in terms of the character and their description and their skills and abilities.
I do the same.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm quite impressed. Really? You have that many? Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. I remember the first time that this came up, and this was probably not 10 years ago, but a bit ago. And the threshold was they needed to have 5,000 followers, Facebook followers. This was even before Instagram. And the funniest part of the story was that we found these people who had followings on Facebook, and I guess it was maybe YouTube at the same time. And they were all in the callback. They were all in the waiting room. And it was the first time they'd ever seen each other. And they were all like, I follow you. I follow, you're so-and-so, you're so. It was a really sort of funny experience, because now I think there's a little bit more of a community about real social influencers, that they have meetings and they get
They
together.
have big conferences, yeah.
Right. This was pre all of that. So it was sort of funny for them to all get together, to see them all together for the first time, and they were all like, "Wait, I recognize you. I recognize you." Hey, you know what?
What?
We're almost out of time.
Are we?
Yes. If
All
I'm not
right.
mistaken, we have 2 minutes left.
Wow. Okay. Well, just quickly, thank you all for listening, and we will get ready to sign off. But I just wanted to give Joshua a big plug. If anybody's looking for an acting class, Josh has a great class, and
You can find it by going to castingbrothers.com. That's the name of my casting company, by the way. Charisse goes by Charisse Glenn Casting. I have a partner who will remain nameless, who I started the company with about 10 years ago called Casting Brothers. So you can find me at castingbrothers.com. And Charisse writes a blog that everybody should be reading, and that's called
theletgo.com, and it's about letting go of all the stuff we no longer need to hold on to. But we will talk about that later because we really have to sign off. Thank you, everybody, and it's a wrap.
It's a Wrap.
It's a wrap.
You're listening to Behind the Camera with Charisse Glenn and Joshua Rappaport, only on LA Talk Radio.